Hey fellows, my name is Madrail and welcome to this video. Sit back, relax and enjoy as I attempt surviving 100 days in Minecraft Hardcore 1.17. And if you like the video, well, consider liking the video and subscribing. It would truly mean a lot to me. But anyway, let's get right into it. This world started as you might expect, with punching a tree. After I had acquired enough wood, I set out to explore. There was a swamp right next to spawn, which was nice as they can have a lot of cows and sugarcane, two things I wanted in the early game. As I made my way over, I encountered a couple of glow squid, but left them alone as I had spotted sheep. I slapped some sugarcane, slapped down a crafting table, and used it to make some tools. I then murdered the sheep and got 3 wool so I could make a bed. After that massacre, I stumbled upon some unsuspecting pumpkins and killed them too. Don't worry, they will be reborn later. I then found some surface iron, so I made stone tools and cautiously scouted the cave. It appeared to be deserted, so I mined up the iron and got my first raw iron. After that I killed a few cows and found some coal, which was excellent as it meant I could make torches. Once I'd mined it all up, night was falling and so was my hunger. So I made a furnace, put some food in to cook, made myself a bed and slept. Ah, sweet dreams indeed. With the coming of dawn I dyed my bed red, for old time's sake. My food was still cooking, so I murdered a few more cows as well as some llamas because they deserved it. I also wanted their hides. Then I chopped a few trees, collected my steak and spied a desert. I went to investigate and found the squid party. Nonplussed, I left them to their revelry and raided this village of all their valuables, and, promising to return and wreak future devastation upon their lives, I left. The next day I decided to make a bundle as my inventory was getting out of hand. So I chased rabbits back and forth across the desert for 2 days before finally getting enough hides. And then I saw it, a mushroom island. While I decided whether or not to settle there, I crafted my bundle only to discover they had been removed until part 2. Despite being disgruntled, I had decided to claim the Mooshland as my base. So I set up camp under a mushroom, then made a few chests and unloaded my inventory. I still needed more leather, but there were plenty of mushrooms around, so I penned a few and killed the rest. So much leather. On day 4 it was time to step up the game, so I made myself a shield, a bucket and a pickaxe so I could go mining. I found a cave where I got some coal and my first copper before heading deeper into the depths of the earth. Because the cave was mostly under the Mooshland, there weren't many mobs. I did however get into a fight with the skeleton. I dispatched it, but then a creeper joined the fray, and after it had exploded in my face, I decided to head the other way. I continued on and found some dripstone as well as a ton of iron and copper. Like seriously, the stuff was everywhere. I returned to the surface on day 5 and promptly sorted everything I had found. I then made myself a full suit of iron armor before breeding mushrooms and felling some trees, as it was time to get an enchanting setup. So I made a steer to level 11 and began to strip mine. It didn't take long to find a cave that had 2 diamonds. I needed 3 more though, so I persevered, admiring the new deep slate and tuff, and eventually found a second lot of diamonds, this one being a 5 vein. So I took the 3 that I needed and emerged from the mines. I sorted out all the items I had gotten, made a diamond pick, and returned to the depths to get some obsidian. After getting 4 blocks, I returned to the surface and made the table. I then harvested sugarcane and wood so I could make the bookshelves. I placed the table down and enchanted my pick, getting unbreaking and efficiency, but no fortune. To get fortune, however, I would need more levels. Then I expanded the mine and somehow forgot to put my arm back on, which could have gone terribly. Luckily, I survived and gathered up a bunch of cobble which I would need for a future project. I then spent a fair while rolling some low-level enchantments on my armor and finally got a pickaxe enchantment for Fortune 3. More levels were required, so I got 10 more obsidian for a nether portal. I made a gold helmet, lit the portal and went through into the fiery depths. I spawned in a crimson forest, but luckily the portal generated on top of a tree, so I was safe from hoglins. I spotted a soul sand valley in the fog, so I bridged over and collected some bone blocks. I also found a bastion, but gave it a wide berth. Then I mined a bunch of quartz, getting up to level 30 before gathering some glowstone. It was day 11 when I returned to the overworld, so I enchanted my pick again and got Fortune 3 and Efficiency 4, so it was time to find more diamonds. I did a bunch more strip mining, and after only 2 days I had found a grand total of 46, which I was very happy with. I exited the mines as the sun was dropping towards the horizon. It was time to implement my plan, so I returned to the village to fulfill my promise. My plan was simple: steal a bunch of beards, kidnap 2 villagers, imprison them and force them to breed while I built a melon and pumpkin farm, which I could use to get all the XP and emeralds I would ever need. So, once I had returned with my victims, I built a dirt palisade to protect them from the mobs of the desert, and then trapped the villagers in a cage with all the beards as well as some bread, so the population would rise. The next day there was a baby, so the villagers must have been busy. I traded with the 2 farmers to level them up, and they both traded pumpkins, just what I wanted. To sell them pumpkins, I would need pumpkins, so I started clearing out a space where the farm could go. On the days 18 to 21, not much happened. I worked on the farm, started rolling librarian trades in search of useful books, killed the golems that had spawned with fire and kept working on the farm. Then, on day 22, I finally got a decent librarian with Unbreaking 3, so I locked his trade in. I enchanted another pickaxe as my old one was about to break. Then I made an anvil, combined them, and with my pick repaired I did some mining so I could make the final pistons and observers to finish the farm. Now that I had unlimited pumpkins and melons to trade, I wanted to get some discounts to get more emeralds and XP out of my resources. So I set off to find a tundra I had spotted earlier in the hope of finding weakness potions in the igloo dungeons. I found a ruined portal with rubbish loot, then spotted an igloo, but alas there was no dungeon, so I set off and discovered a village as the sun was setting. There was a library, so I took their books and lecturned before sleeping the night away. With the new day I found another igloo, and this time I got lucky, so I took the potion of weakness and the brewing stand before journeying on. I found a couple of desert temples, took the loot which contained a few golden apples and some mediocre books, took the TNT, and then started heading home. I skirted around the edge of the tundra and stumbled upon a pillager outpost, which I gave a wide berth. When I got home, I sorted out my stuff before separating the villagers I wanted to cure by putting them into a separate box. Then I lured a husk from the desert and let it zombify them. I disposed of the husk and gave the villagers the fabled golden apple to cure them. By day 28 they were cured, with the farmers trading 1 melon or pumpkin for an emerald, so I took advantage of these discounts and began trading. I spent days 29 to 41 upgrading my armor and tools. I would trade with the farmers to get experience for enchanting and roll librarian trades to get the enchantments I was missing. And, while I waited for the villagers' trades to restock, I began planning out the castle that would serve as my future base. By day 42, I was happy with the quality of my gear, so I entered the nether and set out in search of a nether fortress. I soon found what turned out to be 2 overlapping fortresses in a basalt delta, so I wasted no time in bridging across. I killed a bunch of blaze and, with the help of my looting sword, soon had plenty of rods. Then I scoured both fortresses for netherwort but found no trace, so I headed deeper into the nether and soon discovered a third, extremely deadly fortress in a soul sand valley, where I did in fact find some netherwort as well as some decent loot and chests. After some strife with wither skeletons, I managed to escape and retrace my steps to my nether portal. My respite in the overworld was brief, as after I had stored my loot and admired my gear, which was beautiful, I returned to the underworld to acquire ender pearls. I briefly tried trading with piglins, but gave up when I spotted a warp forest. So, after bridging with highly unsuitable material, I set to trapping endermen in boats and slaying them for their essence. Eventually, I deemed that I had gathered enough, and thus I headed home. I decided to do some fishing in the rain, and it didn't take long for some phantoms to spawn, so I dispatched them and then slept. The next day I brewed potions of slow falling and strength for the dragon fight, then did a bit more trading and enchanting before admiring an aerial view of my castle plan. I wanted a few ender chests for more inventory space, so after gathering some obsidian I made them. It was time for my final preparations, so I bid my shroomland a fond farewell and set off in search for the stronghold to bring down the dragon. It didn't take long for me to get distracted as I found a shipwreck with moss in it, and then spotted some goats. Then idiocity struck, as I mined my ender chest with the fortune pickaxe. So I headed home to repair it, only to discover I had eyes of ender on me. On day 48 I launched my next attempt and this time managed to locate the stronghold. So I dug down and entered that labyrinth. It was one of the messiest strongholds I've ever found, intersecting a ravine and mineshaft, so it took me ages to find the portal. In the end, I followed the sound of silverfish and broke through the wall. By that point, it was day 49, so I set my spawn, placed the Eyes of Ender, and jumped into the domain of the dragon. I spawned inside the island, which was nice. I dug my way out and began shooting the crystals. I had to climb a tower to get the last crystals, so I stayed up there for a bit and took some sniper shots at the dragon until it perched. I drifted down and began slapping it with my sword. Then I got thrown into the air and luckily noticed that my slow falling was running out, so I drank another before I hit the ground. The battle was tough, but all battles must come to an end, so I struck the final blow and watched as the dragon exploded in a shower of XP. I took the egg and headed through the end gate to begin the next stage of my journey, the Elytra. I found a city pretty quick, but it was pathetic. Still, I killed the shulkers and continued on. The fog was making it hard to see, but I finally spotted a sizable city with a ship. So I pillared up, broke through the hull, disposed of the Guardian and took the prize, the Elytra, and the loot in the chest too. Then I raided the rest of the city, finding some more good loot, and killing every shulker I encountered. I had everything I needed, but decided to explore a bit more anyway, so I flew deeper into the End Barrens and found some more cities where I stole the loot and slew the citizens. Sadly, I found no more Elytra, and the one I was using was losing durability fast. So, weary of dropping into the void, I decided to head back through the end gate. I watched the credits roll for a bit before returning to the overworld. I wanted to connect the stronghold to the nether, but as I was breaking obsidian below the portal, I jumped and was transported back to the end. And when I returned, I respawned at world spawn. So I flew back to Mooshland and landed just as my Elytra broke. Talk about timing. I traded for a mending and unbreaking book and put them on my wings on day 52. I then spent the remainder of the day tweaking the castle plan. On day 53 I made a shulker box and set off to the plains as I wanted to terraform the courtyard of the castle, but needed grass. Once I had enough, I returned home and began terraforming. It was done by day 54, so I did some villager trading, then headed to the mines to collect a bunch of cobbled deep slate, tuff, cobblestone, stone, andesite, and yes, even diorite. I also got a decent amount of deep slate coal ore. Once I'd filled some chests, I only needed one more block before I could start building the castle, calcite. So I set out to search for geodes exposed in the ocean. I soon found one and got some crystal shards as well as a ton of calcite and smooth basalt. I looked around a bit more and found another 2 geodes but left them for another day. Once I got home, I sorted my stuff, made a spyglass, and then spent the night hunting creepers to replenish my fireworks supply. The next day, I started clearing out a space for one of the smaller halls. I wanted to use dark oak for the floor, but I didn't have any, so I returned to spawn and gathered a bunch of logs and saplings. I also wanted some slime, so I decided to wait out the night in the swamp, but it was a new moon, so nothing spawned. I returned home and started building up the walls of the hall, and once night had fallen, I returned to the swamp and hunted slimes, getting more than enough slime balls. The reason I needed slime was to make a villager trading hall, so I set to work and built the first half. However, I still needed a friend to zombify the villagers for me, so I lured a husk into the hall, and with him in place it was ready for villagers, or so I thought. The husk wasn't converting them consistently. I did, however, manage to fix it, so I brewed some splash potions of weakness and cured the villagers. Then I got assaulted by phantoms, so I assaulted them back. The next day I traded with the newly cured villagers, and as I was killing squid for ink sacs, I saw it, an axolotl. So I caught him in a bucket, put him in this lovely pond, and never saw him again. Then I began to build the second half of the villagers' cells, and move the farmers in before adding some chests to store all the villagers' stuff. I spent day 67 to 69 building up the walls, creating a gradient from the deep slate to the stone, and adding some buttresses for depth. I wanted to make red windows, so I went to pick some poppies, then spent a while messing around to find a window design I liked, finally setting for this nice recess. Then I spent a whole day making this weird wood thing, which I eventually decided I hated. At this point I forgot to record, but all I did was explore a bunch of surface caves to find copper, and with that copper I started filling in the roof, adding a calcite trim and some upside down lightning rods for detail. But sadly, I only managed to finish half the roof before I ran out of copper, after which I decided to get some bees for an eventual honeycomb farm. Then I got some flowers for them and began to increase their population. I then decided to move my tree farm, so I got Silk Touch on my axe and destroyed some mushrooms before planting down the saplings I had. I was missing spruce though, so I set out on a quest to find some, which I soon did on a mountain, so I gathered a few saplings before getting distracted by exposed copper. So, reasoning that it was as good a way as any, I set out on a mining spree and returned home with a couple of stacks of ore. After fortuning it, I had nearly 16 stacks, so I smelted it all, and finished the castle roof the next day. Then I bred the bees and chopped down some trees. On day 81 I admired the finished hall, which I thought looked pretty epic, and then bred the bees again. I must have an army. Then I began the long and tedious process of replacing all the mycelium on the island with grass. I continued to do this along with breeding the bees until day 86, when I decided it was time to take on the wither. So I headed back to the nether and returned to the fortress in the Soul Sand Valley, where I spent a while hunting skulls. It didn't take me too long to collect 3, so I headed home. This was the day I would fight the wither. I had decided to use the tunnel method, so I went into the mines and placed down the soul sand and skulls at the end of a long tunnel, and the fight began. I shot my bow and brought the wither down to half health before going in with my axe, and before I knew it, it was dead, and I hadn't taken a single heart of damage. Maybe in the next 100 days I'll fight it in the open, but I had my nether star, so after briefly exploring a cave, I returned to the surface and sorted my stuff. Then I spent the entirety of day 88 collecting redstone, as I was running low and would need it for the honeycomb farm. The next day I crafted the beacon, and using the emerald blocks I had collected from villager trading, I made a full tier beacon. I got haste too and returned to the surface to begin mining out a space for the bee farm. And so from day 90 to 92 I made the farm, which is a design by All Mango. I decided to use 8 bee nests, but it can be tiled as much as you want. But after some strife with escapee baby bees, the farm was done. I then tidied up and admired the view of the castle from the air. But the end was nigh, and my base was a mess with chest monsters and villagers and mycelium, so I resolved to tidy it up as much as I could in the remaining 7 days. So I set to work by transforming a large area of mycelium to grass. I got a fair amount done, but there was still so much of the mooshland left to convert. Then I turned to the mess and spent 4 days tidying up, sorting items into a temporary storage system, moving the villagers and tearing down their cell. In the end, I was really just moving the chaos to the underground farm area, but hey, out of sight, out of mind, right? Day 100 came much sooner than I would have liked, but at least I had made the place look somewhat nice. I breathed a sigh of relief and toured the island, showing off the castle and villagers, my farmers with their pumpkin and melon trades, my librarians who sold mending, unbreaking, feather falling and looting. And yes, the castle is by no means done, but I think I've made a solid start. I had so much fun recording this, less so editing, and I am so excited to make part 2. I accomplished so much, and I am so excited to see what I can do with another 100 days. If you're still watching, I am frankly amazed and extremely grateful that you're still here. And if you are, then I have something to tell you. Thank you. And also, this video took like 50 hours to make, so I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Anyway, thank you so very, very much. My name is Madrail, and I hope to catch you in my next video.